Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else. So tonight we've got a slightly unique format for the podcast. So we're joined by Trish Pegorer. Trish is the managing director of Mutti Australia, one of the fastest growing FMCG businesses in Australia and the first client of the AXR sales and marketing business. And we have Mike Dickson. For anyone who doesn't know who Mike is, he is the partner and director for the sales and marketing arm of AXR. So what will be happening tonight is that normally Mike is the one doing the interviewing, but tonight we're turning the tables on him. So Trish is in charge. Trish is going to be interviewing Mike on a range of topics. So from the founding of the AXR sales and marketing business through to the evolution of the podcast and a lot of the learnings and insights that Mike has sort of taken along the way. We'll be recording this episode with the help of Darcy and the team at Pro Podcast. These guys have been hugely helpful to us in growing the reach of the podcast in the last few years. They're the best in the business when it comes to podcast recording and producing in Australia. Couldn't have done it without them. There will be an opportunity for Q&A afterwards. So we've got a microphone that will be coming around. So get your best questions ready. Let's put Mike and potentially Trish on the spot. And everything we're doing tonight is in support of Bear Cottage. So Bear Cottage is New South Wales' only dedicated children's hospice, providing much needed care and support for children with life-limiting conditions and their families. Extra special meaning for us at AXR because one of our much-loved colleagues, Ben, and his family have been the beneficiaries of what Bear Cottage do over the last few years, and it's a very, very close to his heart, so therefore it's close to ours as well. So all the ticket sales have gone to Bear Cottage. If you haven't had a chance to buy your ticket yet, we will have an opportunity later tonight to make a donation to Bear Cottage and learn a bit more about what they do. So if you haven't bought a ticket yet, you can do that instead. That's fine. Okay, so let's get this started, I reckon. So I'd like to introduce you to Trish Pegorer and Mike Dickson.
Oh, gosh. Okay, sorry. Old lady needs the glasses. Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mike for landing me in this and choosing me. I'm really honoured. It's a testament to our relationship and our partnership over the last 4 years. As Andrew said, we're here to celebrate 100 episodes of the pod, but we're also celebrating a milestone for you, which is your 30 years in recruitment, which is an amazing achievement. You've worked in Scotland, England, New Zealand, Australia, but your journey actually started as a wee Scottish lad well before that, a 12-year-old working for your father's salmon business. So I thought we could start by you sharing your journey from that wee child and child labour, working for your family business, to how you ended up running one of Australia's most successful sales and marketing recruitment agencies.
Thanks, Trish. It feels very different being asked the questions, I must admit. I'll do my best. So, Scottish originally, still Scottish actually. So if Scotland play Australia, it's Scotland. If Australia play MD apart from Scotland, it's Australia. So I've kind of got a win-win thinking on there. But grew up in the southeast coast of Scotland, beautiful little part of the world. Very, very idyllic. With, mum had a really interesting job running the carers group for the Scottish Borders. Dad was a CFO who turned entrepreneur and set up this smoked salmon business. And as the eldest sibling of two, my job somehow seemed to be to help him. As the family slept, I'd be unloading fish lorries at 2 a.m, thinking, this is a bit weird, but it's what you do. And actually, I look back now and I think that was pretty cool. watching him build a business, and it became Europe's biggest smoked salmon business. So he went on an amazing journey, and being there right at the start was pretty amazing. I went to uni in Scotland, joined his business, which was interesting, and on my kind of pathway, lasted 18 months, and realised working for your dad wasn't very, grown up. So
that took you to age 14.
That was exactly. I was a child prodigy, Trish. Yeah. So I went from working for him into marketing, went to brand management, and that was pretty cool. In England, I moved down south, as we say in the UK, and I kind of had this really interesting conversation with my boss, the marketing manager, one day about careers. And I thought that was so uninspiring. I left, and and I took the huff and went backpacking around the world to say, well, stuff this marketing career, and came back and went to Michael Page and said, right, okay, I'm back. I need another brand manager role. And in 2 weeks' time, I was recruiting as a marketing recruitment consultant, thinking, how did that happen to me? I wanted the brand manager's job.
There's some AXR people who can relate to that, I think.
And I know. I've applied that thinking since, quite familiar. But so I worked in marketing, Trish, for marketing recruitment for Michael Page for 5 years. Then I moved to Scotland because the hours for the business back then, we're talking, this is like the 90s, early 2000s, we were doing like 12, 13 hours a day. And I had my first child, Rory, who's now not such a child anymore. He's here tonight. And my wife, Karen, and I said, look, when we have a family, you can't work 13 hours a day. That's not sustainable. And I was like, absolutely right. So we left, went to Scotland, which was awesome, and to a little place called North Berwick, which was by the sea, quite idyllic. Beach house, golf course to one side. Karen, my wife, taught tennis at the courts behind the house. It was great, and I had 10, 12 happy years building out my recruitment career, running bigger teams, bigger businesses, getting into the corporate kind of way of recruiting. We had 150, 170 consultants. It was pretty cool when I was kind of second in command of that business. But Runme was running out, and I was ready to go, and they said, "Oh, don't leave the company. Why don't you consider?" moving overseas. I was like, oh, well, why not? What did you have in mind? And he said, New Zealand. I was like, oh, that's quite far from Scotland. It's also the same weather, so I'm not sure why I should go into New Zealand. But actually, I love rugby, and we like the outdoor life. I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. A couple of years in. So I went to New Zealand and with the Hudson business as we become at the time, and I wasn't inspired by the business there. I reported through to Australia. It was a reasonably big role, had 60 or 70 consultants, but I had to restructure it completely into a business I didn't like much, and even though it was fit for market. So I was ready to kind of move on and thought, oh, I'll go back to Scotland or whatever comes next. And a couple of old colleagues from my early days at Page ran a company called 6 Degrees, and they said, look, we can't get Sydney going. It's just not happening for us. You're in New Zealand, you're really close. How about one more step across the ditch to Sydney? So that was a tough question to the family. You're living in New Zealand. Sorry, Rory's rugby career was going great. And we dragged them all over to Sydney. And then 6 really cool years with 6 Degrees, growing what was a very small business into a big business. And that's what got me here.
So tell us more about your time at 6 Degrees, but then there was a pivotal moment where you said, right, I'm jumping out and I'm going to do something crazy like start my own recruitment company in a very mature market.
Yeah.
What was the tipping point?
There was a couple of things that were instrumental in that. So one, I mentioned we'd grown into a big business. And I was getting a bit disenfranchised with big businesses. And I'm sure some of the people here can relate that in a larger business, in a senior leadership role, you end up quite inwardly focused. And I missed being in the market. And I was, more and more, I had so many meetings just about how to make the business better, but without actually making the business better in the market. And that frustrated me. And that corporate journey was why I left New Zealand and joined 6 Degrees. But 6 Degrees was becoming big as well and corporatizing. And for them, it was an exciting journey they hadn't been on. But I'd been on it before, and I wanted more agility. I wanted to run my own thing, and I also thought there was a bit of a gap in the marketplace. But part of that corporatization process was also they said, Mike, want you to go for the CEO role. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure I want the CEO role. I don't believe in, the journey's not for me. So I went for it half-heartedly, didn't get it. And I thought, right, so you don't want me, I don't want you. I'm gonna leave. And there's a lot of huffing going on in this, isn't there? I kind of, so I So I left, because I really thought this all fine and well saying I want agility, I want to do something different, but I thought there was a gap in the market. I really think recruiters get paid for filling jobs, and that's cool. But actually, there's a lot we don't do well as an industry, and I think that's what's missing. And to me, it was how do we fulfill this whole concept of helping someone understand their whole career journey, and that's the gap I wanted to fill with my own thing.
And so you jump out of 6 Degrees and you tether yourself to AXR, an existing business that was more focused in the financial services. What was it about the AXR brand that made you think you could add on or bolt on a sales and marketing piece?
Yeah, so I liked the guys at AXR. They had this kind of mission, which was careers, not jobs, which is a really simple concept. I thought, that's what I'm talking about. So I met one of the founders, Greg Madden. There's 2 founders, Greg Madden, Greg O'Shea. Met Greg for a beer to say, look, I'm leaving 6 Degrees, just giving you the heads up, because we used to be partners. I used to refer them my finance business, and I'm going to do my own thing. And he said, well, that's interesting. Why do you want to do your own thing? I said, well, because I want to do all this stuff with careers. He said, well, that's kind of what we do. I said, okay, but I don't want to work for somebody. He said, no, we can do this together. And my business partner and I we've been doing this a long time, and maybe we could have a third person in this marriage, which always ends well, right?
and you said to Greg at the time that you really wanted time to play golf and go running.
Yeah.
Bi-weekly, daily.
Yeah, well, lifestyle is important as is balance. So we approached it quite carefully. They said, let's run this as a trial, but we the Gregs and I both knew quite early on. I think this could be successful, although the first few days weren't so easy.
Speaking of that, so rewind. It's March 2020, and you kind of know where I'm going with this. Week 1 of AXR. March 2020, you hit the ground running. First couple of days in the office are going swimmingly, and then?
Yeah, COVID hits day 3. We shut the doors, so that was tough. First 40 hours were brilliant. I got jobs on and clients saying, this fledgling idea you've got seems pretty cool. We're going to support you. And by Friday of that week, the jobs were pulled. All the meetings had cancelled, and we were all working at home, wondering how we work at home. But particularly when you had no business. It wasn't easy.
And so you spent the next 6 months, can I say, scrambling to a degree? Or what was that experience like?
So it was actually, I think, a blessing in disguise. Because I think if I had just run hard with lots of business, the evolution of the brand and the idea I had around careers would have taken a lot longer. But I had all this energy to kind of copy it up and meet for COVID-safe walks with people like Paul Bull, and I just say, hey, I've got this idea for business. What do you think? I think I could bring it to life. I think I can make it commercial. This is how I think the brand could go. I've got these ideas for changing the recruitment experience, delivering against this issue I think exists of helping people understand careers. So we were miles ahead of the brand, albeit we were miles behind with revenue.
Well, on that note, 6 months later, you land your first placement. That must have been a huge relief.
More than that, Trish, thanks to you for giving me the opportunity, and we've had a great journey together. But yes, that was a big relief. We have a great journey. Actually, not only were you relieved, I was relieved as well. So I think it was a pivotal moment in both our businesses. Just to digress for 1 second, Mike, at the time I had approached him and called him. I was in a massive panic. I was trying to recruit a role, head of sales for our business, and I was in another process with another business as such, and it went awry. It was going really awry, and I was in a massive panic. And I called Mike and I said, Mike, I don't know if I can give you a brief, but I'm going to give you a brief, and if we end up landing a candidate, we'll work it out then. So he presented a candidate to me that I just went, oh my God, she's amazing. This is perfect. But why the heck would she want to come and work with this small business of mine? So I think what I realise now in retrospect, the value you placed on that process and taking us on the journey, both the candidate and me, because the candidate was coming from tier 1 experience, and I'm thinking, she's not going to want it. Like, why? And obviously the concerns for the candidate were, how am I going to go into this small business after being in this tier 1 environment? And
I think the value was that you actually spent time with us both to take us on the journey, to get us on the same page, to ultimately land that position for me. And for Daniela, who's in the room, head of sales now, sales director. And I think not only was that a pivotal moment because you saved my backside in that moment, but that role and Daniela has been a turning point for our business. The structure and the capability that she's brought has set us up for the next 4 years, and every other person you've brought into my business has followed suit. So thank you. I'm glad we helped each other out.
You're most welcome. And we had turkey for Christmas that year, which was really good. So thanks, Trish.
Turkey with a side of Mutti tomatoes. So to talk a little bit about the podcast, it's 4.5 years on. And I'm reading this because there's a whole list of stats here. Oopsie, hang on a sec. My thing's turned off. A whole list of stats here that talk to the success of the podcast, which started out accidentally during COVID, but is now the number 3 sales podcast in Australia, number 1 sales and marketing career podcast in the country, top 10 marketing podcast in Australia. You have 2,822 active listeners per episode across all the continents in the world, and a total of over 200,000 downloads since launch. That's pretty good.
It's all right. Yeah.
That's not bad. But how did this podcast come to be?
Well, it didn't start out like that. Let's face it. The original thinking was, and I'm a frugal Scotsman, Trish, with a business that had no income. So how do I build a brand? And it's going to connect this concept of career journeys to the marketplace. So I had a good network of senior leaders. So I've talked to a lot of the senior leaders to say, look, how do you go when you have a career conversation? How about reviews, PDPs? Do you feel well equipped? Do the people coming in feel well equipped? How about you helping me build and raise the bar on an understanding on how to have a career conversation? And let's do this through this magic new thing we're all working with, which was Zoom calls. And so we set up a thing called the Sales and Marketing Director Incubator. And I had 16 leaders in sort of the second half of 2020 who said, okay, I'm in. We started, I think, in July or August with Louise Baker as the very first podcast guest. I say podcast guest, she was a Sales and Marketing Incubator guest on a Zoom call with about 120 people, little heads in the screen, listening to us in a laptop chat away. And that's where it started, Trish, was a simple idea to try and connect with future leaders who didn't really know me because my network was more senior, and to build a brand they didn't know, but to get out there very fast and for a bottle of wine an episode, which was my budget.
So you started out with live sessions, of which you put me through that grueling experience at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. No amount of coffee can wake you up for that one. But why did you pivot to a studio pod?
Well, the pivot took a while, but we did run a number of these. For a couple of years, we ran the live sessions and under the badge of the Sales and Marketing Director Incubator. But we invested in some tech. We did get a little mixer board, some microphones. You'd laugh, Darcy. It was appalling what we were trying to do. But you're in an office where people are slamming doors. There's alarms going off. We've got a very active building manager who likes to make announcements about fire alarms and emergency lighting. And sometimes the tech would just drop off. There was a fear that calls would drop. And one time it did. And I was interviewing Craig Wagner and Dave Tuff. And Craig's in the room, I think, tonight from Blackmore's. At the time held the joint sales director role. And thankfully, the two of them on the call because I just disappeared for 10 minutes and they chatted away, which was quite good.
You had another nightmare with someone from Blackmore's too.
I did have another night with Blackmore's. It was the, I actually, at the time, Megan Farquhar, who's Blackmore's now, back then was JDE in Holland. And she just got the time zone wrong and turned up 24 hours late. So that was a pretty poor session as well. We had to reschedule that one. So it's the live sessions weren't easy. They were really tough. But also as COVID stopped and people were going back to office, I think, when do you run a live session? When can people listen? Apparently people were listening because I could still see the heads on the screen, but we dropped down to sort of 30 or 40 people. But so many people were coming up to me and saying, loved the interview with Jeff McKenzie at Pernod, for example, or whoever it was. And I'm like, that's interesting because there's way many people who are saying they loved it that weren't on the Zoom call. So where is everyone getting this content? We're throwing these sessions up onto Spotify and Apple and Google, not really paying any attention, calling them the Your Future in Sales and Marketing podcast. And we had a look, and we were getting 1,000 views and listens an episode, which was, and all my energy was going, why are there only 35 people in the session? There's 1,000 people listening. So it changed. The audience had changed, times had changed, and my business, one of my business partners, I can't remember, it was Greg Mann or Greg O'Shea, said to me, Mike, I know you're Scottish, but you've actually got an income now. You are actually making money. You are growing this business. Why don't you go and talk to a professional podcast studio, stop the stress, and actually these people you're bringing on are your clients. So make it a nice experience for them if you can. Bring them into a studio and be quite cool. So we talked to Pro Podcast a couple of years ago, and the rest is history. We went to the studio and all the stress disappeared.
Very good. Now, in terms of other guest stories, any particular quirky or surprising moments with guests?
I'll give you a surprising one, and it wasn't surprising to me. So I've been always told that when I speak to a fellow Scots person, my accent gets a lot stronger. And my view is nonsense. I'm my own man. I'll choose how I speak, and I'll be the same. So what you guys don't know me, I know me. And so a couple of months ago, I interviewed Michael King. At the time, was the sales director of Haleon. I think Michael's in the room tonight as well. If you've spoken to Michael, he's 100% Scottish. And we had a great conversation, and great sales director, easy guy to interview, natural storyteller. And I just thought this was a really good pod. And when I listened back, I was like, oh, you're so Scottish. It was like, Twa laddies having a haver.
Did you put subtitles on that one?
You have no idea. You know what I said, Michael, but nobody else knows what I said.
So your pod's getting more and more attention and success. When do you reckon you noticed the turning point and you thought, right, I'm onto something?
There's probably two or three points. First of all was when PR companies started approaching us. We were like, really? And we had a few good guests from PR companies. Cheryl Heyman came on from a PR company. She talked about the move. She's a non-executive director, and we had a great session on the move from the LT to the board. That was pretty cool. And we still get, with John Fung on, who's the Chief Customer Officer of Domain. So we get some of the ancient guests come through PR companies. Most of them are from America. They're D-list celebrities who just see the numbers, I think, on the downloads, and it triggers an interest, and they just see, sales and marketing. I've got this celebrity sales guy in America. He'll be great for the Australian marketplace. So we say no to most of them. That was one. Secondly, was companies started to approach us to say, can we put our GM on, or our CMO on? We like your podcast. We want to come on. So people approach us. That was a good turning point. And then another realization was, whilst we set up the pod to talk to future leaders about their journey, when we did a demographic kind of look, which you can do through the stats on who's listening, and we had a massive part of our audience, about a third of our audience is actually senior leaders. So we're actually serving an interest in senior leaders too. We're kind of going, well, and it makes sense. Why would senior leaders not be interested in the career journey of other senior leaders? They're there because they got there making smart decisions. So they're learning a lot as well. And so building our brand, but also doing, I guess, giving something back to that marketplace too, was a really nice kind of realization that we've got something very special here. And
in terms of the topics that have resonated, you've obviously had hundreds of hours of conversations. Does that make sense? Hundreds of hours? Anyway, a lot.
A lot.
What are the topics that have resonated the most?
There's quite a few we keep visiting, and really early on, one of the things I wanted to talk a lot about was career longevity is created through career breadth. And it's a concept we started with early on, we talked about the McKinsey model, where you have a functional experience topped by experiential breadth, and other leaders came on and made it much more interesting. Robbie Lawson at Google talked about a career safari, which was really interesting. I think Robbie's here tonight. We've had a career jigsaw thing from Chris Bergen and a few others, just kind of talking about the fact that your careers should not be linear. You've got to be gathering these experiences if you're going to create this really long career and maximize your potential. The second one was be patient. Don't run up that function too fast, because you'll get too high with too little experience and be ineffective, and you'll slide back down again. And I think The third is you own your career, nobody else does. You're the person who sets the goals, informs yourself, invests in your development. I remember Caroline Waite saying in one of the earlier sessions, there's no point in telling me you want to be a sales director in your review session, then doing nothing for the rest of the year that demonstrates you want to be a sales director. You've got to actually live it and bring it to life. It's your career, not anybody else's. And those are some of the themes we keep coming back to.
Great. And I've got a couple more questions, and then I'm going to unleash the audience onto you for the Q&A. But what's your vision for the pod going forward?
So the vision is a good vision because we can't ever get there. There's always going to be new people coming into sales and marketing who don't understand the career journey that we can help. And whilst we've got 2,800 odd listeners, which is a good chunk of the FMCG community, there's still more we can gather. And it is growing still every episode, which is wonderful. So I think it never stops. And it's continuing to bring that to life. We've evolved it. We've got the Future Leaders series now. So we bring in people who are mid-career. Amelia and Andrew and the team have been interviewing future leaders about what's the step up from there. So that mid-stage career has been really cool. We've got the How To series, which has been really popular on how to be great in interviews, how to write a resume, how to resign properly, how to negotiate a salary increase. Those how-to series are really useful too. So we'll keep evolving and pushing it and thinking, where do we create value in the career piece? Because I think it keeps going on. And whenever a new guest comes in, they've often listened to a few, and they're like, I want to be different. I want my journey to be different. And by definition, their journey is different. And that's what makes it interesting.
You talk a lot about, or you always coach around mentorship and role models and the importance of having someone that's influential in your sphere that you can lean on. Who are your mentors and role models?
Okay, that's a hard question because it's easier to preach than it is to do. So I talk a lot about the importance of mentors, and I don't have formal mentors, but I have a lot of people I have huge respect for. My business partners, Greg Mann and Greg O'Shea, we've got a really tight bond, and we can talk about anything. And I they're great at grounding me and keeping me into a little bit some of the ideas, which can come too fast sometimes, but they're awesome. The family are really good too. I managed to tempt Rory into an FMCG career now, so he's on the path, which is quite exciting. But our dinner conversations have evolved a little bit. So I take a lot of energy from my family as well. And I mentioned Paul earlier on. Paul's a great inspiration for me, running his own business, what he's doing with MindPick and with FMCG analytics. So I'll always support what Paul's doing. And we have wonderful conversations, Paul, about the industry. You're a great sounding board. And there's some Italian, Australian lady who runs this tomato business.
I didn't plant that, honestly. This is not the Mutti show, Mike. Keep talking.
Who's been awesome. And I think the journey your business has been on, Trish, and mine at the same time, it's just been wonderful to go on together, which feels like a bit of a love-in. But I mean that it's been fantastic working with you over the years.
I concur. And for me, it's we've got a brilliant relationship. Not only are you a good human, and not only are you just my recruiter, you're a partner, you're an extension of my team. And I kind of coined this phrase to myself: you don't place candidates in my business, you place family members. And that's made all the difference for me. And you do have a room full of people that I'm sure feel the same to some degree. So it's time to unleash and get the Q&A started.
Now we're going to throw it over to you guys. So Amelia will kindly pass the microphone around. Fire away with your best questions, and please let the listeners know who you are and what your business is before you ask your question.
Hi, Mike. Caroline Waite, CEO of a company called Stuart Alexander. I am interested, you're very passionate about building careers for people and long-term careers, sustainable careers. Talking to a room full of senior leaders, what would your ask or advice be to help us build talent?
That's a great question. I think businesses often think short-term linear, Caroline. So if we are often taking a brief, it's too often an emergency purchase. We've lost a national account manager in Woolies. We need a national account manager in Woolies. I think sometimes the answer is not the obvious one. And I wish businesses would think a little bit more creatively on talent development and be a bit more brave in some of the recruitment that they do and think to the competencies and the potential of the individual as opposed to the experience that they bring. And that's not just recruitment, it's in how you develop people as well. And I think businesses who create these jigsaw type lattice careers for their individuals will keep them for longer. And they'll leave when they're supposed to leave, as opposed to when they need an experience somewhere else that they're not getting in their own business. So I think it helps with retention as well. We often push people back to organizations who come to us to say, I can't get what I need. And they've not necessarily had the right conversation either. So it's not just on the business, I think it's on the individual too, to vocalize the experience they think they need to be a senior leader or to progress and create longevity. So it's on the individual and the business to raise a level of conversation beyond what's going on in that moment for the business, but how can that career last over time, and how might that national account manager perhaps come from supply chain or come from marketing as opposed to necessarily that one function.
Hi, Mike. Over the time, it's been a few years now, and I'm now with Huhtamaki Tailored Packaging and Louise Baker. And thank you for having me on your first podcast. It was a pleasure. Enjoyed it. I'd love to understand a bit about what you've seen change over that time, if anything, in terms of what people are looking for in careers or how they're going about their careers. Are you seeing anything emerging, any new trends, any new ways of working or approaching that progression?
It's a great question, Louise, and good to have you on the podcast, not just us on a laptop.
Yes.
Never forget you first, do you?
Oh.
Mike, this is not that kind of podcast.
Where did I go from there?
You can cut that bit. You can cut that bit out, right?
Oh, no, we're going to leave that. It's going to be the promo one. That's the promo piece.
I think there's been a lot that's changed. I think we've had a small part to play in that as well. 2,800 active listeners. There's a lot of people who are interested in their career who weren't getting much insight or advice beyond their immediate circle before. So there's a lot more advice out there through the help of everybody in this room and more, the 110 guests that have been on the 100 podcasts so far, who have really challenged, I think, perception on what a career looks like, and taken it away from the very obvious path that you often enter a career with, which is, I see my boss, my boss's boss, my boss's boss, and that's the path for me. And it never is. And if it is, you're not going to go that far. So I think the level of understanding and education around career is a lot better. I think organizations are much more mature around how they're developing people as well. To the question you had before, Caroline, I think we've got a lot more work to do in that, but I see it happening a lot more. Another trend which, I think a way that's playing through, and another trend which I'll talk to too, is the gender stereotype has been really challenged in the last few years in a good way. Marketing isn't for girls and sales isn't for boys. And I did the stats in this, thinking in preparation for this podcast, we've worked really hard to get a pretty even split of male and females on there. We've actually, and this is not deliberate, we've actually had 55 females and 55 males. It's been an absolute 50-50 split. And it's almost the same when you look at the number of sales leaders we've had on versus male CMOs. So we've really kind of been quite deliberate in saying, hey, there's a different way to do this. And I know that so many of those leaders have been approached by people in the more early stage, those future leaders have approached those senior leaders to say, I didn't think I could be a sales director, but I thought my pathway was different, but I want to be that now. I know there's lots of mentoring that's going on as a result of the podcasting that we've done. And that's been a really pleasing change that we've seen in the last 4 years. And it's no longer as tough. People say, have you interviewed all the female sales directors yet? I'm like, no, I've got loads more to come. In fact, the next pod is Claire Darroch, who's coming on, who's now the sales director of Vidigal, another female sales director, and equally when it comes to male CMOs. So I think that's been a really interesting trend as well.
Wonderful. Love that you're shifting paradigms and a great force in the market. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting.
That is an interesting angle.
An invoice, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for your kind words, Mike. That will be reflected on the next invoice. Question, I'm an AI nerd. What's your take on AI in terms of future-proofing ourselves in our careers, and what role do you think it will play?
I'm going to answer this quite broadly because whenever technology disrupts my industry, recruitment, when job boards first came on, I've been doing this a long time. I did this before job boards, and we used to advertise through newspapers and magazines. When LinkedIn came on, and I still get this question at a dinner party or a barbecue, somebody will say, "Oh, you're in recruitment. LinkedIn must have stuffed your industry," and it hasn't. And I think AI is the same, Darcy. I think LinkedIn is an enabler, and I think AI is an enabler as well. You've got to learn how to use it really effectively and become more efficient in what you do. And actually, it should help you grow what you do in your role. Now, there are some roles naturally that are challenged. But even I think if you go back a couple of years, the script writers going on strike in Hollywood because AI was taking over script writing, I don't think we're there yet with AI taking over creativity of production. I hope not for your sake and my sake. But I think AI will be an enabler in the same way other tech comes to disrupt industries. We absorb them and we get used to using them as really cool tools. And if you don't, you're stuffed. Interesting as well.
Here we go.
He's got a cheeky look on his face, I can just tell.
Thanks, Mike. This actually isn't a question, this is a statement. You guys are all in sales and marketing. I'm Greg O'Shea. I'm a partner of Mike, or one of Mike's partners, not the first. But I'm lucky enough to work with Mike. His passion and enthusiasm is amazing. And meeting you guys today in sales and marketing is incredible. So I look after accounting and finance, and I deal with accountants all the time. So if you ever need a cool accounting and finance person, please give me a call. Shameless plug. Thank you very much. Mike, you've done a great job. You're awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Graham with Mutti, business users lead of pasta sauces over in Italy, proud placement of yours. So thanks so much for enabling us to be here today. I want to go back to some of the themes you've spoken about, which is about helping the gap in the market you identified and helping an individual identify their full career journey. We talk about recruiting family members. We look at the community around here. In many ways in the industry, sometimes we see recruiting practices get depersonalized, a little bit more technology. Just want to get a sense of your view on that gap in the market and whether you see it converging or diverging over the next 10 years. Is it still there? Are other people going to catch up with you? You're going to go your own way? How do you think about it?
It is interesting. I think we still get paid to place people in jobs. So if you look at the recruitment industry, that hasn't changed yet. I've got some ideas in the pricing model, which I'm.
Is that discounting the pricing?
No,
I'm just asking for a friend.
Funny you should mention that, Trish.
Yeah.
Short-term discount, long-term more. But there's ways I think as an industry we could evolve our pricing model, which will change behavior away from putting a bum on a seat and just filling the need in the moment. But I do think my view is if you can elevate the conversation going into a business as a candidate, not just the role you're going for, but the journey of that organization, how you can contribute over time, then you'll have a very different conversation, because the role you do in day one is not the role you're going to do in 6 months or 6 years. And therefore, if you take that conversation and talk about the immediacy of what's needed to be done, but also where's this organization going and what will success look like in a year? What is the business vision for 3 years, and how could I contribute and help you get there over 3 years? And your conversation will really change as part of that recruitment process. And I think that still sits within the model quite easily in terms of what we have currently, but it will deliver much better recruitment. Now, we try and do that already. There's nothing that stops the industry delivering against that as well. I think where we have a march on the industry is the ecosystem that we create around the career insight from the likes of the podcast, the quality of the reports and blogs and salary guides and insights we put out there. The monthly report on who's where in the marketplace is an enormous open rate because it challenges perception. Because people go, oh, how did they get that wrong? And I didn't think of that. And as we put interesting moves in that. And so our role is just to keep challenging and pushing and challenging and pushing to elevate the conversation. Now, others can catch up, but as long as we keep ahead, then I'm good with that.
Congratulations, Mike. Paul Bull from MindPick on everything you've done for everyone in this room and across our industry. You've had a massive impact and you're highly valued. You're amongst friends, so you can be honest. I'd love to know the questions that you've never asked that you would really like to ask people.
Oh, okay. Everyone's career is full of the most brilliantly well-planned moves and the biggest stuff-ups. And I'm way too polite with the stuff-ups, I think. So I probably would love to ask, why did you do that? Could you not see that coming? So maybe a bit more honesty about some of the really interesting moves that go on, because you learn a lot from the stuff-ups, and maybe I'm just a little bit too polite on talking about the learnings as opposed to the amusement factor of going into the mistake itself. But yeah, maybe that's one, Paul. Good question. I've got to think about it. I might come back to you some more.
Lucky you didn't get him to interview you. It would have been very different.
Feel free to ask Trish a question too if you want.
No,
guys.
this is not a Mutti show.
Well, no, whoever Mike interviews next has you to thank when they get put on the spot. Any final questions? Time for one more if we've got any.
Don't speak Scottish, okay? It's not gonna, just keep it English.
Michael King, unintelligible Scotsman. So based on the last question, what's your big stuff up?
Ooh, nice.
What did you say?
Yeah. Don't worry about it. It's okay. What's your biggest stuff up?
I can't honestly. I didn't hear you.
What's your biggest stuff up? Should I say in this Scottish accent?
No, I'm kidding. I'm just trying to delay. What's my biggest stuff up? That's a really, really good question. I would, I don't know if it's a stuff up, but I mentioned having John Fung on the pod earlier on. He's not in the room, but John might listen, so I'll be careful what I say here. But John came from a PR company, and he had this amazing career in Uber, in Google. He's an Australian who had gone and conquered the tech world. And I was really flattered when I was approached by his PR company. He was new back in Australia, trying to rebuild a profile, running domain. And I thought, this is really, really cool. We had a kind of prep call with the PR company, which is unusual, but I thought, hey, he's a big celeb. I'll go with this. And he was really quiet. And I thought, oh, no, what have we done here? We've committed, we have to have this guy on. And we had half an hour coffee beforehand, super quiet. I couldn't get much out of him at all. And I was really worried that this is going to be an absolute nonsense. We even couldn't put it out. And then as soon as I did the intro, it was like someone put a firework up his bum. It was just, this guy just lifted off, and he was brilliant. And he just, at the end I said, what happened? He said, I just bring the energy when I need to. Thank God you did. So not a stuff up, but almost I thought would have been a stuff up, but ended up being, he was pretty good. You can tell why he's had the career he's had.
My mum saw our podcast and she said, if you're ever in press week, you have to stop in for a cup of tea.
Oh, nice. With shortbread.
Thank you, Trish and Mike. So a big thank you again to Campari for hosting us in this amazing venue. Thank you to all of you for your support of the podcast and for being here tonight. We do have a little gift for Trish.
Is it a bottle of wine? I already got one of those.
It is alcoholic.
Is it a discount? Buy 10, get one free is my idea. Like 10 placements.
That's not the
11.
fee structure I've got in mind, Trish.
But Trish, you've been an amazing supporter of the AXR business, and thank you so much for your help with
Thank you so much.
putting on this wonderful event tonight.
Thank you, Trish.
All right, thanks.
You went way too easy on him, but we can talk about
I wanted
that.
to be
We can
nice.
talk about that later.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.